The What to Next podcast helps you build a TBR of future favorite books. In each episode, Lori and Maine interviews authors and book influencers to recommend books they loved for you to pick up today. If you're an avid reader, always looking for your next great read, then the show. Before we get to today's episode, I want to chat about our sponsor today. Our sponsor is Epigraph Literary Festival, which is a 3-day virtual event that introduces readers to authors with new and upcoming books and hosts genre and lifestyle theme sessions. We host a spring and summer festival in April or a fall and winter festival in September. You won't want to miss our happy hour sessions at the end of each day of the festival. And if you're a idea of a good time spending time with book people, you won't want to miss it. So you can join us on April 27th to the 29th by registering at epigraphLitFestival.com. If you missed the festival, you can catch the replays and you can find the link at epigraphLitFestival.com, or you can join us in our next festival. So now let's get to today's show. Hi, Carlyn. Welcome to our Next podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. At this point, I call myself a romance and thriller writer in YA and adult. I'm from Los Angeles, have a background, sort of went to film school, tried that out for a bit, and then was sort of writing books the whole time, but ultimately decided to focus on the books. So here I am now. I work in publishing, and let's see, I don't know, I got a rescue dog in like October, and she is my life.
All right. So you do what would be like murder or sex, like thrillers and romance are like, these two polar opposites, but they are somewhat driven the same idea. They're page turners, they're engaging, you just involved with it. How do you manage to jump among genres,
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where like I read genre agnostic, if we want to call it that, my whole life. So it was sort of like I had an interest in general with like characters, and that was what mattered most to me. So it was just like, what kind of vibe of the story am I looking for at that point? And when it came to writing, I actually started out with thrillers. I don't know. I think it was just the idea of you have to have such an intricately tight plot that like it kind of made everything else seem easy. That's not actually true, but like that's what I sort of went into the mindset of. So I started writing that, but it always had romantic subplots. So I wrote thrillers that had romantic subplots. And so when it came time to just wanting to write a rom-com, it was more about like just making sure tonally that it fit with the genre. So I like did a deep dive in reading all sort of like the bestsellers that were going on. It was like 2019. So it wasn't even that long ago. So I like during that one big rom-com boom. So okay, I was reading all of those just to get a sense of like, this is what the tone usually is. These are sort of like the series of events. So it's really just making sure that like, just like that it wasn't too sad or too like off tonally. And this took revisions, like as my editor could probably tell you. And so I think it was just making sure that I was really honoring this genre that like I think I read a little bit less because I sort of came from more of a high-paced sort of action, like darker world, where I was like, okay, like these stories have just as much impact. How can I make sure that these readers are going to be sort of satisfied by the story? And the funny thing is now, like romantic thriller is sort of, and it's always been here, but it's kind of like up and coming where I'm like, can I just combine them now? Like now I feel like I have all this sort of skill with writing romance that I'm like, okay, now I can really make a subplot, main plot in a thriller like shine. So
yeah. Well, I have to tell you, one of my favorite romance niche is serial killer romances. Serial killers should fall in love with you. There's something to be said about the one who's killing. You're like, oh, that sociopath also needs love.
That's like so bad. When I was 13, that was the first thing I wrote was a serial. It was a serial killer romance with like, I don't know, the characters were like 18 or whatever. Like, but my parents were kind of horrified. And I was just like, I don't know. I watched The Dark Knight and got really inspired, so I wrote this book.
Yeah. I love this. And you know, like it's part of it, like maybe like it's definitely there's a new interest, renowned interest in this idea of like combining both genres and like merging about them, you know, but both genres just have beats. Like they have like different plot points or different things or there's certain formulas. So you kind of blend in and fix it, do make them your own, but they have certain things that will make you, you know, gravitate for it. So
Yeah, and it's so interesting because even in the rom-com world, I feel like the like adventure rom-com and like the rom-com with like a little bit of like a crime thriller mystery element is like really on the rise too. So it's so exciting. Like you can take it in both sort of tonal directions, which is so cool.
Yeah, I think it's challenging the market. There's the market who listens to true crime podcasts and reads smut, you know,
Yeah.
on the side. Like this is it combines the best of both worlds. Like what else can you ask for? You know. Mm-hmm. So all right, so let's chat about Sizzle Reel. What is the elevator pitch?
So the elevator pitch is it's about a 24-year-old talent manager's assistant who realizes she's bi and decides to like air quotes make up for lost time by trying to seduce this ambiguously gay actress client. And shenanigans happen.
Mm-hmm. And more will be real. So this is like another celebrity adjacent, you know, kind of like niche. What was your kind of research? You're in LA, so you may have maybe familiar with this more than probably someone who is like non-LA, you know, in this world.
I mean, so like what Luna went through, so essentially I didn't exactly go to film school, but like I did a degree from USC that was like kind of English kind of film. And like you take a lot of the film classes with the film major. So I'm like, I did it. I did the film degree. And so I originally wanted to be a screenwriter. And so they like basically say like, there's a couple paths you can go down. Like it's such a people industry that you kind of are just told like, basically you have to network and you have to like do these really difficult jobs, like hard amount of work. And then like your boss kind of treats you like shit. And like, I tried that out for a while and I just like, I couldn't do it. But along the way, I went to the Crazy Rich Asians premiere with my boss, and I just sort of fell in love with rom-coms. And I was just like, okay, I want to sort of put together the feeling of being from this industry and having that like experience of like the assistant in Hollywood and like making it into a rom-com. And then so I don't know, it's kind of just something I've been around for like most of my like college and then post-college life. Like if you're anywhere in those sort of areas, like all your friends are doing it and they all have unique stories of how they went through the assistant track and like people they've met and bosses they've had. And so a lot of it, like the talent management part is like real stories of like either what I experienced or like it was combining a lot of bosses. Like first of all, it's not based off of like one boss that I've had. It's kind of like taking little quirks from all of them, but it's so interesting because a lot of those executives, it's just fascinating because they seem to lose their ability to like do really basic tasks. And I always wonder, I'm like, I think you were a normal person like 10 years ago. Like, what happened? And then in terms of the celebrity aspect, like I wanted to make it so like Val felt like a real person. Like there's an element of like you sort of go between the like way Luna views her, which is obviously like to some extent the way we all view celebrities is kind of this elevated idol, but also like wanted to be able to show that there were cracks there that Luna just wasn't seeing until she does.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. And yeah, I lived in New York for 14 years. And so I got the New York scene a little different. I was an assistant. I was a professional temp for about 5 of those years. And you get like every sort of boss, every sort of like idea of like workplace, like, you know, ridiculousness, like the expectation and the expectations, like a million girls would like to have this job. You're like, really? Nobody wants to do this, you know, like the low-worst product, you know, mentality. Like, you know, you're like, but you're not good at this.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Yes, and you have your work friends who are your commiserating buddies, you know. So you're just kind of like you get through it. So, all right. So let's chat some book recommendations. What kind of books do you tend to read?
So I like read kind of everything. Right now I try to focus in on like I'm trying to establish like what things I want to write. So I try to like read in those areas. So for the most part, I read adult rom-coms, I read adult thrillers, I read YA contemporary, and I read YA thrillers. Like those are kind of my, and then like there's still like fantasy authors from YA that I still follow and stuff like that, but mostly in those niches.
All right, so I'm curious with the rom-com, adult rom-com, what was your gateway book? Like which one was your first one? You know,
it was actually the X Talk by Rachel and Solomon. Again, she's my friend, so like I wasn't even really fully intending to go into the rom-com space because at the time I was writing thrillers and I was like gung-ho on that. But I read all her YA contemporary and she was like, hey, like I'm writing this adult, like do you want to read it? And I, of course, yes. And so her writing is just so good that I was like, oh wow, like I can see the sort of what this genre probably is. And it's totally worth investing in. And so from there, like then I started reading like, you know, a lot more of like the Allie Hazelwood and the I'm trying of course I can't think of any authors. Like so then I just started reading like everything else that was like popular on the market then.
Yep, that's very cool. I always ask that question, like, what was your first romance read? Because sometimes you can see in your mind, you're like, okay, it was really cringeworthy, it was like outdated, or it was like really good, it was like really in alignment, and like it was like it opened up this world of like thousands of books that I can actually binge on. So
yeah, I think the newness helped me. Like, I would love to say that I've been reading romance like since long enough back to where you can start saying like, oh, I can see how this like hasn't aged a certain way, or like I can see like really large, like decades long trends. I'm not there yet. I still need to dig deep.
It is all good. It is all good. So do you have any books to recommend our listeners to pick up?
Oh man, let's see. I mean, so I'm just gonna keep plugging Rachel. Her newest book, Business or Pleasure, is like probably my favorite adult rom-com right now. It's a sex lessons sort of road trip book about this woman who's a ghostwriter, and she has this terrible one night stand. And then the next day she finds out that the one night stand is actually a sort of C-list actor who she got assigned to ghostwrite his autobiography. And so they sort of go around like she goes around learning about him while also he asks her to help improve his sex game, because that's how you deal with an awkward one night stand when you have to write about him. And it's just so fantastic. Let's see. And then otherwise, like I'm kind of like, so because I'm sort of like all over the place, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's a lot of recent adult rom-coms that I really loved. Like I really loved Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. That's actually one where we were talking about how like it is mostly a rom-com. That one is about a woman who is doing a true crime PhD, and that's kind of like part of how she sees the world is through the lens of like this idea of like serial killers being everywhere and sort of the true crime mindset that we're all in. And basically she moves over to her dad's house after he passes away to sort of help clean it out and sell it. And the neighbor next door is like this really cute but very like too friendly man. And so she's like, this is a serial killer. And like, meanwhile, he's just like a nice, normal dude. And it's really, really sweet rom-com that has just sort of that. It's just fun when the protagonist is kind of weird. Yeah. And so that one just like, because it's like a true crime girly, like that perspective on this genre that I just thought was so sort of fresh and innovative. And then going over to the sapphics in my little sphere, I really loved Kiss Her Once by Alison Cochrane, which was her latest rom-com. And that one is a holiday rom-com about a woman who has sort of this whirlwind romance during a snowstorm. And then the next year, she makes a deal to fake date, I think it's her landlord. I might have that wrong, so that's the case. But like someone she knows, and goes to his family's house to sort of have this fake dating arrangement, ends up realizing that the man's sister is the girl that she had the whirlwind romance with last year. And so it's just so fun. Like I also love when there's sort of a big cast and you kind of get the feeling of like, this could so easily be a comedy movie. And like I so gravitate towards cinematic things like that, where like every character is so distinct and so funny that it's like, you're rooting for the romance, but you're also like, these people are so great. Can I just like stay at this fancy house for way longer than 300 pages?
Yeah, that book is really fun. It's just like it's cozy vibes. Like it's not Christmas. It's kind of like Christmas vibe, but it's like cozy vibes. And there's also a sense of like who's getting with whom. Like, like
Yeah.
this whole question, like this character, cast of characters, like how is it gonna all work? But it will work out, because
Yeah.
you have the promise of romance. It's gonna happy ever after.
I love a good mess before things work out. Like
Yeah.
it's so fun.
Yeah. So awesome. Carlyn, tell us where we can find you online.
Let's see. Twitter, I am at Carlyn Greenwald, of course, Instagram at Carlyn_GEE. And I think I do have a TikTok. It's Carlyn_GEE, but mostly on Instagram. So
Awesome. Thank you, Carlyn, for being on the show.
thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. For a list of books mentioned and other romance recommendations, please visit whattoreadnextblog.com. Did you know you can purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore? With Libro.fm, you can pick up more than 250,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from real booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company, you know the name, but you'll be part of a different story, one that supports your local community. If you're new to audiobooks, there's a perfect way to squeeze into more reading into your busy life. Listen with the free Libro.fm app while you do your chores, walk your dog, relax at home. The Watch to Read Next podcast has a special offer for our listeners. Get 2 audiobooks on Libro.fm for the price of 1 with your first month of membership. Use code WhatToReadNext. This offer is only valid for new members in Canada and the US. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.